Dharmabytes is brought to you by Free Buddhist Audio, the Dharma for your life. Our work is funded entirely by donations from our generous listeners. If you would like to help us keep this free, make a contribution at freebuddhistaudio.com/donate. Thank you, and happy listening.
And this is an important part of the story because Amitabha is the figure, as it were, behind or above Avalokiteshvara. And Amitabha puts him back together again. So we've got our very own Buddhist Humpty Dumpty. So he's put together, but when he's put together, the form changes, and he's put together with 11 heads so that he can look in all directions, and 1,000 arms so that he can reach out and alleviate the suffering. So I think it's quite interesting. There's a lot of interesting elements in that legend or myth, and I'm not going to go into all of them. There's plenty of talks on Free Buddhist Audio, and there's lots of talks with Bhante. Sangharakshita goes into a lot of the symbolism of that. But one thing that always struck me was this thing about it's okay to fall apart. That sometimes you have to fall apart, in fact. And sometimes you just have to surrender and let go and acknowledge that things are too big. And then find something that helps put you back together. And Amitabha is that thing I was going to say, it's not quite right, but Amitabha, in other words, it's love that puts us back together, because that's what Amitabha is. The most quintessential, extraordinary, unconditional love. And that's what will put us back together. So, a little quote from one of Bhante's talks on this. He says, "You can see the meaning of this symbolism very clearly. This is how you feel sometimes. This is how you actually feel when you see around you so much suffering. You feel as though you could split, as though your head was split into pieces and your arms multiplied infinitely, 1,000-fold, in all directions, so as to succour this, to help, and to render some aid." So basically that's the story, the myth of Avalokiteshvara. Lots of other stories around it. Sometimes it's said that he had taken a vow to continue to practice until all beings were saved from suffering. And then he realised that this was never going to happen, that beings were infinite, suffering is infinite, and samsara is infinite. And so he kind of thought he'd give up. But then he didn't give up, because Amitabha came and kind of gave him a new lease of life with 1,000 arms and 11 heads so that he could pick up and start again. And again, I just think it's quite important to, it's a story, it's a myth, it's a legend. But even a bodhisattva like Avalokiteshvara can sometimes feel that it's all too much. And one of the other things that strikes me, and I'll maybe say a bit more about this later, was that Sangharakshita chose this figure of the 1,000-armed Avalokiteshvara as a symbol for our order and our community. And I think there's something about coming together in that like, if we fall apart, as it were, and we disperse, then we can't actually be very efficient or very effective. But if we can come together to make up that figure of Avalokiteshvara, then actually we have each person has so much more. You know that saying of the whole is greater than the sum of its parts? Well, the whole Avalokiteshvara is greater than the sum of the different bits of Avalokiteshvara. So this is the sort of compassion that Avalokiteshvara represents. A kind of realistic compassion, maybe, a recognising that the task ahead is big and that maybe you need help. He needed Amitabha's help to be able to function as a bodhisattva. Maybe we also recognise that we need help just to kind of keep practising sometimes in the face of what can seem very difficult.
We hope you enjoyed today's Dharmabite. Please help us keep this free. Make a contribution at freebuddhistaudio.com/donate. And thank you.